Hello and welcome to the NMSS April tournament. This tournament is the mothership format where people can optionally have an almost immobile craft in their fleet, which some people chose to do, some people didn't. The immobile craft gets to play by slightly different rules. It gets to be bigger and slower than everything else. But other than that, the rules are pretty much the standard NMSS fare. So this first pool we have is the neophyte pool. In fact, all of these people here are submitting for the second time. So let's see how they get on. Up first, we have Margicus up against Striker. Apparently, Margicus is not how his name is supposed to be pronounced, but he didn't care to elaborate on that, so we're going to keep going with that until otherwise specified. In the meantime, though, you can see he's got a revised version of his antimatter kiter here. It should be a bit improved, but I'm not exactly sure what he changed. I think he just rebalanced the thrusters and the center of mass. Next up, we've got a little mortar fighter here. Margicus is kind of worried about some high-speed skirmishers we may see later, but that's the main thing the mortar fighters are there for. On the other side, we have the Mercury Defense Force by Striker, who has a bunch of these small little support craft that are carrying missiles on the back and a gun on the front, and some very larger fighters here. You can see the farmer heavy turrets on the side are very dangerous weapons, and farmers have some of the best long-range weapons in the game. And then we've got a factory ship here with trying to take advantage of the solar panels in an attempt to generate resources in combat, which is one of the distinctive parts about this tournament is that resources are on, and so factory ships such as this one will be able to build new ships in the fight. But let's see how they get on. And you can see immediately the ships from Margicus are a good bit faster than the ships from Striker, leading to a pretty clean wipe of the support craft early. And the factory ship, you can see Striker had one really neat idea. These are farmer med beams, and farmers and reds are the only factions that have any sort of healing things, and the med beams will help blocks grow more quickly, but unfortunately this resource pile here was the ship that Striker's factory ship had decided to build, but it didn't get a chance to go anywhere with it, unfortunately. With the engage speed of Margicus's fleet, it just didn't have any time to actually grow and was overwhelmed almost immediately. And yeah, Matrix, that is some pretty amazing timing. But moving into round two, honestly, with the fragility of farmers and how quickly Mars' team is engaging, which is apparently Margicus, or Mariucus, something like that. With how quickly his fleet is able to engage, the farmers aren't really getting a chance to do what they were expecting to do. And so they're kind of, you can see, just getting overwhelmed and buried by sheer numbers. A nice try from Striker, and bonus points for being brave and bringing farmers instead of one of the more competitive factions. But it does not appear to be working out here in the first round. That's it though, cleaning up the one kiter rather effectively. Yeah, Striker, I think, plays a lot of Destiny. His first submission, I think, was all Destiny themed. It was like all the Vex guys, if I remember right, like hobgoblins and stuff like that. And Marjorie takes it. So next up we have Death Not Taxes, who is bringing this for a station, which you can see here is using a lot of the railguns in two-dimensional hyperstacked format. Drone launchers, factory in the back, a bunch of station shields. So overall, this thing should be able to bring some serious support fire. And other than that, these are another blueprint we've already seen from Death Not Taxes before, which is a two-stage torpedo craft that will disconnect and try to withdraw. But because of how embedded the escape pod is, I think it had issues trying to withdraw before. Although I think it did manage to build one new craft already this fight, the station is. Those rails being a little bit intimidating, it would appear. You can see him just cut through one of the small mortar craft. Okay, so it's Marchicus. On one of these. They're pretty neat, because they're connected by just this one little beam here to the main chassis. If that beam gets fractured, then it becomes a two-stage ship. It's pretty solid. And the 7x2 comes from the number of antimatter kiters that were in the fleet. There are 14 of them. And the ejector seat, you can see in the center of the screen, managed to withdraw pretty cleanly. Though it is getting pressured by the kiters. That may not go so well for it in the long run. Marge doing a pretty solid job here though. One of the big problems Marge had last time he brought these kiters, that they did not behave very well and they like to crash into the enemy. But courtesy of some help from Flypace, that appears to have largely been worked out. Nice twitchy little antimatter kiters. And Marge takes round one. Moving into round two. That one went pretty straightforward. I don't think there was any too particularly large AI shenanigans going on. So as long as Marge's ships respect the way that they're supposed to, which that one is not. You can see though, this time Marge's fleet is having a much harder time actually dealing with D&T's ships. And this one is a little different from the other ones. You can see this one's got a much larger torpedo array on it. That's gonna hurt if anybody's bringing slow ships to the pool. But then again, while mines could work to help defeat the kiters in sufficient quantity, you could say that about pretty much any weapon. Another clean ejection though, but doesn't really have an answer for the kiters. Yeah, you can see how D&T's ships are kind of losing blocks. And what that is he's using the large Terran hull blocks, but he's using smaller blocks on the corners to connect it to the rest of the chassis, which forces it to kind of shed the blocks, which is kind of a neat idea. I like ablative armor. But now we have Insane Asylum, who has the Jefferson starships, and each of these ships actually has I think almost all of them, one or two doesn't, but they're all basically puns based on star names. Let's see, we've got proton swords, we got spacers, we got missiles. What is this? Guns and a proton sword. Pretty solid all-around designs, and stationed back here with the honeycomb style of building. Just a couple little guns on it here and there to, I guess, to just dissuade people. But let's see how it goes for Insane Asylum. Asylum already said he doesn't think he's going to be able to win this, but let's see how it goes. He is bringing a lot of missiles. Although the station did decide to build another station, which I don't know is optimal. Although the station is, I think, pretty inexpensive. So there is that. Starship's holding up pretty well, though. Securing a decent little point lead. The antimatter's being a problem, but doesn't appear to be an insurmountable one, at least not so far. But the battle is very far from over. It does appear that Insane Asylum's fears are coming to fruition, though. The starships, I guess, scored a lot of points on the mortar fighters early on, but are having a much more difficult time dealing with the actual kiters. They did manage to snag a kill on a few of them, though. But the kiters have pulled back the point difference and are now pretty sizably in the lead, which is usually a pretty foreboding moment. And you can see the station did build a few other small support craft too. But because the game only counts the starting fleet as real ships, anything you build in the middle of the fight doesn't need to be killed for you to win, which is why the station that's back here is basically useless. It doesn't have enough long-range weapons to actually hit anything, and this is the only one that has to be killed. And because of the shape of the arena, there's not really any angle that the decoy station would actually work, unfortunately. Yeah, solid round one for Marge. And there it is. So moving on to round two. No, Matrix. Modded tournaments are generally very unpopular among the tournament community, and most mods aren't balanced for shit, so there's usually one or two weapons that just outclass everything else by a very far margin, and so you just see a whole lot of that. And don't listen to Splinter when he says he's the community. He didn't start building a fleet for this one until like 3 or 4 hours before the due date. And with a point lead very similar to the last round, but the situation kind of being about the same, feeling pretty good about saying Marge has this one in the bag. I've done modded tourneys in the past, and turnout was always very low. Didn't matter what mod it was. There've been 2 or 3. And yeah, technically Fly Paste was a modded tourney, even if all it did was add heal blocks to the game for Terran. I know for a fact I ran one for NTR and for Infraspatia. And Infraspatia, everybody just used the micro nuke. And for NTR, everyone just used the modded cannon. The other weapons didn't even matter. Look, round 2 is looking like it's Insane Asylums. In today's episode of Mons Doesn't Know Shit. Yeah, the Dawnbreaker in NTR was pretty amazing. But here we go into round 3. Asylum pretty clearly demonstrating that he can't be counted out just yet. But yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with the NTR tournament, Splinter built this giant gun and attached a ship to it. I think it was called the Dawnbreaker, and when it fired, the bullet was half the size of the arena, and when it hit anything, the whole screen just turned white for a second, and then like 4 ships just died outright. Real-time PvP in Reassembly would be miserable. You have to have a lot of rules adjudication in order to keep tournaments flowing smoothly, otherwise you get things like basilisks. Or, you know, Crazy Yeti. Yeah, Crazy Yeti is totally legal, but it does murder your frame rate. And sometimes it just amoeba walks around the arena and nobody's really sure why. No, well that's just it though. Time dilation rule works because I can check every ship and every fleet. If it was real time, you couldn't necessarily enforce a time dilation rule. You might be able to drop a maximum block count rule, but that would... I feel like there would still be enough wiggle room for somebody to take advantage of that. I mean, I was generous with Alex's submission because farmers need all the help they can get. Honestly, I think it probably would fail the time dilation rule, but I let it in. And, is it real-time PvP in Reassembly? If I could, I would just build Tinkerel that fire from off-screen, or you'd have to like ban Tinkerel and ban nukes from the tournament entirely. Insane Asylum does look like he's going to be taking round 3 though as well. So much for Marge's clean sweep. Yeah, I do think one of the things Tinkerer would need is a bigger drawback than just increasing energy cost per shot. NTR actually kind of did a decent job of it with its modular cannons, but modular cannons by their very nature are so much stronger than every other weapon that there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. But Insane Asylum takes the match. So up next we have Striker against Death Not Taxes. And here I think Striker might do a little bit better because he'll have more time to actually get his capital ship to build stuff. I'm not sure what the capacity is on it though. I forget how much a solar panel holds. You can see the station for Striker is actually also very heavily armed, but D&T's fleet is rather durable and packing a ton of firepower of its own. One of the, I think those are called the Sorcerers, got kind of taken apart, but at the expense of the bulk of Striker's ships, and it does not appear to be going so well for what remains. And now that the station is actually being shot and pressured, it's not going to build anything anymore for the rest of the match. So this one is probably going to go D&T's way. Especially seeing that ship off the bottom of the screen just cutting through. And D&T takes round 1. I wouldn't be too surprised if round 2 went about the same. Like I said before, Striker is bringing farmer ships to the field, and farmers have some durability issues. Farmer heavy turrets are some serious weapons though. And another clean ejection out of one of the flying sorcerers. And Striker's down to just the station again. And pretty good timing on this little dirge from the soundtrack. And I think I forgot to mention it earlier, but we are again using the Homeworld Deserts of Kharak soundtrack. Mostly because I think it's really good. Station doing a pretty good job of holding on here at the end though. Farmer missiles have long been one of my favorite farmer weapons. They really do get some good results. But there's a lot of incoming ships still. Well, a lot of incoming damage, I guess. There aren't too many ships left. But the farmer point defense is working out rather well too. And yeah, as Clem pointed out, you can see the drones kind of clustering around just above one of the flying saucers. What that is they can't find a path through all the rubble in order to actually get to the enemy ship. In the meantime, farmers, if allowed to sit at range, will actually do quite a bit of work. They have some of the best long-range weapons in the game. It's just normally the caveat being that they're really slow and really fragile, so they don't really ever get to use them. But there we have another rejection. Just in time to die though, unfortunately. So now it's just the two capital ships left. And here, I think if the farmer capital would actually shoot at the Terran capital, I think it could probably pull off a point win, if not a kill. And yeah, I don't have any problem with Winner's graphics mod. It makes the game look so much better, I think. Yeah, they're stuck here. I'm not gonna let this play out. They're not doing anything. But that gives the match to D&T. So now we have Striker up against Insane Asylum. And Insane Asylum is the only one to take a round off Marge, but I think the capital ship from Striker has a good bit more splash damage than one might expect. And those heavy turrets on the other large farmer ships should not be underestimated. A couple hits from those would probably completely destroy one of Insane Asylum's craft. But that said, Asylum is putting up a lot of points very quickly. And I don't believe there are any red submissions. Red being faction, not color. And on the right side of the screen you can kind of see what the heavy turrets do to things when they actually connect. It's pretty brutal. But the proton swords out of that ship that was on the left side of the screen, those are pretty devastating weapons too. And Insane Asylum takes that match. So last up we have D&T up against Insane Asylum. D&T's capital I think is going to have a little bit of a harder time in this one than it has in any of the previous rounds. Especially if the larger sorcerer up at the top of the screen manages to connect. That would cause an abundance of issues for it. And yeah, Reds are a very big gamble. They can deal a ton of damage, but they are the most fragile faction in the game, as I'm sure anyone who's played them is familiar with. So if you build your ship around the idea of dealing crippling amounts of damage in the early seconds of a fight, you generally do very well. But against kiters, you can't really rely on doing that or anything like that. And here we can see Asylum has built up a small lead. I think as he takes apart this larger craft from Death Knot Taxes, he's gonna get a very, very sizable lead going. In the meantime, it looks like the station for D&T is finally getting into the fight. A singular plasma cannon doing work. And the Asylum looks like he's going to be taking round 1 here in just a moment. This seems like it fits into the realm of Surmountable. And Asylum takes round 1. And round 1 went really well for Asylum. I'm not sure if it was behavior just happened to be working out in his favor or not, but it does look pretty optimistic for his fleet going into round 2. Actually, I think this is the standard flying sorcerer design from D&T. This one is a newer design. You can see it's got some different structuring on the waffle pattern. It's got some hyperstacked armor here in the middle to help it survive a little longer. I think overall that's a pretty new design out of his fleet. And yes, this is 60 physics update per second. And there will be 5 pools before the bracket. Yeah, the Asylum, I think the plasma cannon spheres might be doing you a bit of a favor. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, the plasma cannon sphere is sitting just outside D&T's range and laying in with the damage. They're actually doing pretty alright. Yeah, I'm not even sure what Twitch's theater mode is. But despite a very strong start from DNT, you can see that Asylum has managed to pretty much recover. And put up quite a big point lead now. I'm guessing the ships that just came in from the left side managed to kill the station from DNT's fleet. And Asylum takes the match, which puts Asylum and Margicus moving on to the champion pool, or the champion bracket. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good one.